What do we know about backyard ants? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods, talking about nature one small step at a time. Aren't you fascinated about what goes on in your own backyard? I know I am. When I was camping last week, I noticed that right by our fire pit area, there's whole colonies of ants, and they were all very, very busy. And I wondered what they're up to. So I decided that when I would get back, I was going to try to figure out what it is they do and what they try to get done in the ant world. They are, as we know, a very specialized group of insects. What we know about them is that they are a very complex society. They differ based on what species they are. They have very stratified tasks about what they're supposed to do, namely survival and reproduction. And normally when you see an ant colony, it consists of different kinds of groups. There's the queen, there's the worker ants, there's the brood, which is going to be the eggs, the larvae, the pupae, the various states. The queen's role is primarily laying eggs, just kind of like bees too. And the workers then perform various tasks. Some are out foraging for food, looking for new nests, maintaining the nests that they have, and defense. There are certain other types of insects and other things that love to come in and attack ant nests. For example, we've even seen if you step near an ant hill, the ants will come pouring out and try to attack and bite your ankles. So they defend their area. The worker ants are, like I said, looking for food. They're scouting the various areas. And these are the ones I believe that tend to get into your house. I do get a few ants every year in my house, and if I let it go, then more ants come in. And what they do is they think that they leave a pheromone trail, which is a scent trail, to help other ants find that location too. And some ants are very specialized, looking for very specific kinds of food, maybe like fungus or honeydew, as compared to what's going on in my house. Then there are worker ants that also take care of the colony's young, feeding them, making sure that the larva and the pupa and the structure inside the nursery is intact. And they also might transport the brood to different parts of the nest based on temperatures, or let's say that there was some flooding rain and this area of the nest got flooded. You will often see that when there's some sort of event going on, and you can see this even in your backyard, you may see ants carrying eggs someplace else. And so then they're very specialized to make sure that they are caring for the ants. And the defense, like I said, there are predators, both animals, mostly insects, who are looking for getting in and eating what they can find. It's a good source of food for many critters. And so they will do ambushes, they set traps, they form blockades. You will even notice that at times when there is flooding, they will throw their bodies across the rivers to help the other ants cross on top of them. One of the different ways that these ants communicate is, like I mentioned, pheromones. They leave a trail, but they also do tactile signals where they may be touching each other and tapping out signals, maybe even auditory cues. I think that is less seen than the tactile ones. You'll often see them touching each other. Namely, the queen ant lays eggs. The workers, like I said, raise the eggs. And when the colony gets to a certain size, the queen may produce wing males and females for mating purposes too. So they go off and find their own new colony. Like I said, they have a division of labor. They're very complex and organized in that labor. And they act as what they call a superorganism. And that idea is that you have however many ants you have in a colony, but they're all working together in the same gel of things. There's no rebellion in the ant world. They all know what their job is. They all know what they're supposed to do, and they all work for that colony's survival. And I remember a long time ago, I had a boss who was very into ants, and he thought that we would all be better if we acted more like ants. I don't think you get a lot of creativity and ideas and, starting your own business when you have an ant colony. So typically when you have a colony, there's only one queen and she's the only one laying eggs, and she relies on the workers to do everything else. Like I said, that she can generate other winged ants so that they can go find their own colony. And typically, when it comes towards the lifespan, the queen can live for years, sometimes even decades. And they rarely ever leave the nest after the mating flight, after they mate and then come to this particular nest. The males, their whole job is to reproduce, and they die shortly after they do. So their lives are seasonal. The females will live a little bit longer. They have some specialized work, but they also do not have very long lives. I mentioned before that there is trail pheromones, but there are two other kinds of pheromones out there. One pheromone is the alarm pheromone, and that warns the other ants a danger is coming. And then there's the queen pheromone, which regulates reproduction and the colony's action. What are we supposed to do next? So mostly the tunnels, if you were to dig down deep inside, which you couldn't do because you couldn't maintain the structure, is all sorts of tunnels, chambers, nursery, food storage. It's built entirely by the workers, and some colonies are very, very tiny, and some of them are massive, depending on the species, how long that colony has been going. They've even found some colonies that can stretch for over hundreds of miles, and they call those super colonies. I don't know that we have super colonies in our backyard. I suspect that that is more, I've seen those in shows about Africa and very rural places that never get touched, and very temperate places that are great for living things to live. So, first of all, ants have a collective intelligence. Like I said, they work as a super organization, but they use what they call decentralized decision making. There's no one ant that leads the group. There's not a hierarchy that's there. Like I said, there's pheromones that the queen sends out to get certain commands out there, but really they just respond to local conditions, the temperature, and then the pheromone signals that are around them. And they survive based on how healthy the soil is. Is it aerated? Does it have good nutrition in it? Is there pesticides in this lawn or in this area? Or other pests, because insects eat other insects. How many predators do they have in the area? Whether they have plants that depend on ants to spread their seed and pollen around, so they can even be a pollinator as well. In the Midwest, I'm Jill from the North Woods, we have a number of ants. Common household ants are usually what you see when they're inside your house. Like I said, I got a couple of them every year. There is something called an odorous house ant, and that is they have a smell to them when you crush them. I mean, who goes around crushing an ant, right? But they can smell. They invade kitchens, usually in the spring, and sometimes can be in the walls and under the floors and in mulch and that kind of thing. Oftentimes we see pavement ants, and the pavement ants are usually brown to black. They have parallel lines on their heads. They nest in cracks of driveway, sidewalks, and you'll see that if you get a cracked sidewalk, there's a little poof of soil material that they dug out and flung up on top of the sidewalk. You'll be able to see that. Also, the types of ants that will go into a house, usually because sidewalks are near houses, they'll actually eventually go inside. But then there are like wood and forest types of ants, carpenter ants. They're larger, they're usually black and dark red, and they nest in wood, dead logs, and they can even hollow out the wood. Now, they don't eat it, they're just there to make tunnels inside of it. So they will do that. And there's general lawn and garden ants. What we have here is they're called field ants. They're medium to large in the ant world. They dig in the soil, they form those little dome mounds that you might find in your backyard, and they are primarily harmless. And if they were to even pinch you, I don't even think that they pinch, you wouldn't be able to really feel it very much. You just get a little pinch. Then there's what they call thief ants. They're also known as grease ants, and they like fatty foods. And so they will usually nest near other ant colonies and steal their food. But they're very tiny little ants. I think, I've certainly seen those in my backyard for sure. One of the interesting things is there's other ants that you have to pay attention. They're really hard to see because there's something called the acrobat ant, and it usually has a raised heart-shaped abdomen above its head when it's disturbed. And they live in barks and in trees. There's all sorts of different ants that will eat go and raid other bugs. Sometimes they will get mistaken for carpenter ants as well. It's really easy to identify ants. Usually there is an extension, which means extension of your university in your area, that talk about what kind of ants you have in your neck of the woods. I have one for the North Woods, so I know I can look at ants, go to their website, and try to figure out what it is I'm actually seeing. And there's all sorts of other types of ants that are not in my neck of the woods, like harvester ants. They will tunnel large mounds that will be 3 to 6 feet wide on the edges, and other insects will try to move in. And the ants, they'll gang up on them. They'll even take over the elaborate mazes of passages that they will find from other bugs. Then there's even weaver ants. The weaver ants kind of are, they gear up for battle, it says, that they fight each other, that they're good at soldiering. Keep in mind is that different places have different ants. They can handle different types of temperatures, cold weather, warm weather. They can handle different types of situations, like I said, living near people where they can go into houses and take food, living next to other ants. And they have different defenses. Some of them even will pinch, or some of them have like a light formic acid that will create like a sting if they were to bite you. Mostly, those are not the ones you find in the Midwest. Usually the ones we have here just kind of pinch a little bit, but I wouldn't go sticking my finger into an ant nest for sure. But you'll always be able to see them sort of go out and try to attack anyone who comes out there. Some interesting thing about ants is that, first of all, they will often farm aphids. These are the ones that are common in the Midwest, this formica ant. And what they do is that they will protect the predators from attacking the aphids. And in return, the aphids have a milk on them, like a sweet thing on them that the aphids will leave on the underside of leaves and in stems, and so the ants protect them so that they can get to this very sweet food. There are even ants, they said, that like to vote. Basically, the idea is, let's say that they need a new nest. This is not every species, but they'll go out and send recruits to go find nests. And then as soon as they do, they will take other recruits to go and evaluate the nest. And essentially, they leave then for this new nest. And so it's sort of like voting with your feet. They vote to go to a new nest that they found to be the nest. There are acorn ants, not in my neck of the woods, but they can live inside, and they drill holes inside of these little tiny holes inside of the acorns, and a whole colony can exist inside of there. I have seen, and I don't know if this is necessarily caterpillars or ants, where you will get an acorn and it is hollowed out. And maybe it's ants, maybe it's caterpillars, but they are using the acorns as little tiny homes. Ants also behave differently when there's different types of temperature. The ants that we have in my neck of the woods, the formica ants, they become very active on sunny sidewalks in early spring because it's warm. They can't produce their own body heat. So they use the heat of the sidewalk to sort of kickstart them into action and wake themselves up. But when it is warm, they'll go out and become very, very busy. You'll notice that a lot of times when it's very chilly out, you won't get much in the way of bug activity because there's just no way of warming themselves at that particular point. But the other part of it too is that you will be able to see at times ants form a line walking across a patio. Like you will just see this very long line of ants. And it's one of those things that you don't see very often, but you can be very observant and once in a while actually get to see them. So I hope that helps you enjoy ants a little bit better. I think understanding your backyard a little bit more is kind of exciting. And so my challenge to you is become an ant observer. Some people even have like little ant colonies that you can buy from the store. I know my mom wouldn't let me have one, but that way you can have an ant watching journal, keep track of the different ant hills you have in your backyard, try to figure out what species they are, maybe even sort of map it out so you can see where exactly your ants are. Like I said, you don't want to stick your finger in them because they can pinch a little bit, but maybe just understanding a little bit better about what kind of ants are in your backyard. Now, if you live in some place that has kind of nasty ants, Make sure you talk to your parents if you're a kid before you start going around and poking at ants. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And remember that you can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.